Under the red dawn light of the southwest coast of Australia, each wave gently lapped against the side of the ship as hundreds of spiny lobster fishing boats left the port, starting a new day full of promise and no less harsh. The sound of the engine echoed throughout the space. The fishermen in thick rubber jackets, dragging heavy iron traps, prepared to face the vast ocean. They were not looking for any creatures, but one of the most expensive seafood in the world, Australian spiny lobster. A living treasure under the sea. Spiny lobster, also known as rock lobster, is completely different from the usual lobster with large claws. They do not have the characteristic pair of claws, but stand out with long beards, sturdy bodies, bright red or bronze brown when mature. Their shells are thick, with sharp spikes growing all over their bodies like the armor of a sea warrior. This species of lobster lives hidden in reefs and caves on the deep sea floor, where sunlight is just a faint trace. This is what makes catching them an art, a game between man and nature. Between technique and perseverance, the millions of spiny lobsters caught each year are not accidental or simple. They are the result of long journeys at sea, meticulous calculations of currents, tides, water temperature, and even the behavior of the lobsters. Experienced fishermen can look at the color of the water, feel the wind and know exactly where the gold mine is, where thousands of lobsters are hiding. They often use traps called pots. Cylindrical cages made of sturdy iron frames, covered with plastic and lined with wood to attract lobsters to crawl in. The bait in the traps is fish scraps, fish heads, fish intestines, a strong fishy smell that is especially attractive to spiny lobsters. When the ship leaves the dock, the traps are neatly arranged on the deck, marked with colorful buoys for easy identification on the sea surface. The trap setters often use GPS to carefully calculate the distance between the traps to optimize the number of lobsters that can be caught. Each trap is dropped to the sea floor, 30 to 150 meters deep, then waits there, often overnight. There are large ships that drop up to 1.000 traps per trip. Creating a giant maze on the ocean floor, where lobsters cannot resist the strong smell of bait. Before the sun has risen above the horizon, the crew has begun the work of pulling the traps. A hydraulic machine installed on the side of the ship will slowly pull each iron cage weighing dozens of kilograms from the sea floor. Each time a trap appears above the water, the whole ship is bustling. If inside there are 1, 2, or even 5 or 6 large red lobsters struggling, these lobsters are immediately sorted. Those that are large enough are kept. While those that are too small are released back into the sea to grow further, a strict rule in the industry that ensures the sustainability of the fishery. Australian fishermen are known for their strict adherence to conservation regulations. The government sets clear rules on seasons, minimum sizes, permitted fishing areas, and the number of traps each boat can release. Some waters also require each lobster to be tagged before it is sold, helping to trace its origin and control legality of its harvest. However, the huge profits from spiny lobsters make this profession a golden dream for thousands of people. A large spiny lobster can sell for hundreds of Australian dollars, especially during the Lunar New Year season when the Chinese market is willing to pay a lot for the fresh, still wriggling lobsters in oxygen tanks in ports like Geraldton, Fremantle, or Port Lincoln. Every afternoon is a seafood festival. Ships line up to dock. Tons of spiny lobsters are loaded and sorted before being transferred to live tanks or packaged for export. The sight of hundreds of aerated water tanks, inside of which are thousands of bright red lobsters squirming under factory lights. Creates a scene that is both wild and modern, where nature and industry work together in harmony. There are days when the sea is rough, with winds gusting to level 8 to 9. But the fishermen still do not give up, because the season only lasts for a certain period of time, and each day that passes is a lost opportunity. The sailors are not afraid of the wind and waves. What they fear most is returning empty-handed, empty traps. Calm days when the lobsters do not eat the bait. That is when the captain has to make a difficult decision, change position, adjust the depth, or wait for another day. There are fleets that have to sail hundreds of nautical miles to find suitable waters, anchor there for many days, and live and work like a small city in the middle of the ocean. The difference of Australian spiny lobsters lies not only in their impressive size and appearance, but also in their sweet, firm meat and characteristic aroma. This is what makes them always sought after in luxury restaurants in Japan, Hong Kong, China, and Europe. In high-class parties, grilled lobsters with garlic butter or steamed with soy sauce are always the center of attention, making people admire not only for their flavor but also for their expensive value. Behind each delicately arranged lobster dish are the sleepless nights of hundreds of fishermen struggling with the sea breeze, sweat, blood, and nameless stories at the forefront of the waves and winds. Australian fishermen's spiny lobster traps are not just simple cages. They are specially designed to not harm the lobsters and have escape hatches for the very small ones. Inside the cages are narrow compartments that lure lobsters in but cannot turn their heads out. The materials used to make the traps are carefully chosen to withstand the harsh marine environment, salt, waves, seaweed and water pressure. Each trap is tagged with the ship's registration. Ensuring that no one else can steal or use it without permission. Thousands of traps dot the seabed, creating an elaborate, sophisticated system that is difficult to replicate without years of experience. When the crew starts pulling the traps, the work requires coordination and precision. A hydraulic crane operator will hook a rope to pull each heavy trap from the seabed. Once the traps are brought aboard, another crew member quickly opens the lid to check the shrimp inside. If you're lucky, they will be full of large, dark red shrimp with powerful wagging legs and antennae. The grader will measure the shrimp's body length with a specialized ruler. Any that fall below the prescribed standard will be released back into the sea immediately to avoid breaking the law. There are days when the boat catches thousands of lobsters, filling the deck in aerated tanks. The scene is both bustling and stressful. With qualified lobsters, fishermen quickly tag them and put them in tanks of cold seawater. The tags attached to the lobsters not only help identify their origin but also serve as a tool to ensure quality when selling them to the international market. The Australian spiny lobster industry is famous for its strict and transparent control system. All commercial fishing vessels must report daily catches, fishing locations, the number of traps, and are monitored by satellite positioning devices. This monitoring system allows the Australian government to effectively protect marine resources, helping the spiny lobster industry develop sustainably and long-term. Back to daily work. On each fishing boat, all activities take place at a fast pace. No one is allowed to be late because time is gold, especially when the weather is about to storm or the currents start to change. Spiny lobsters tend to move with the tide, and if fishermen do not collect their traps in time, the bait can wash away overnight and become ineffective each time the traps are pulled up. After removing the lobsters and replacing the bait, the fisherman will drop the traps back to the same spot to maintain continuity. A ship can operate continuously from before dawn until nightfall, with repeated trap pulls lasting for hours. Some large ships work in shifts, dividing the crew into two groups that take turns resting to maintain non-stop work. On offshore trips lasting 5 to 10 days, they live, eat, and sleep right on the ship, which is equipped with a kitchen, bunk beds, an engine room, and even an industrial freezer. A workday can start at 3 a.m. and end at 10 p.m., only resting when they are too tired or the sea is stormy. In such conditions, each lobster caught is a prize, a real unit of value, paid for by hard work, sweat, and sometimes danger. On the west coast of Australia, where the largest concentration of lobster boats is located, the fishing community considers this profession a family tradition. There are families that have been hunting spiny lobsters for 3 generations, from grandfather to grandson, each generation learning and inheriting their own secrets in choosing trap locations, preparing bait, and reading natural signals. The Australian spiny lobster logistics system is considered one of the best cold supply chains in the world. From fishing vessels, transshipment ports, refrigerated trucks, storage warehouses, to airports and cargo planes, all are synchronized to keep the lobsters in the best living conditions. There have been lobsters that left Fremantle port in the morning, and arrived at the customer's table in Beijing the next afternoon, still alive, still wriggling vigorously. That is the achievement of a professionally organized, modern and globally standardized mining, processing, exporting industry. Consumers, especially the upper class in China, Japan and Singapore, are extremely fond of Australian spiny lobsters, not only for their taste but also for their brand reputation. They believe that every lobster caught from the pristine, mineral-rich waters of Australia carries within it the essence of nature. Spiny lobster dishes such as sashimi, grilled lobster with cheese, or seafood hot pot are all served in 5-star restaurants with prices up to hundreds of dollars for a small portion. On big holidays, companies order tons of lobsters as gifts for partners, showing class and luxury. From an economic perspective, spiny lobsters are one of the most valuable commodities in the Australian seafood industry. The price of lobsters fluctuates seasonally, by size, and especially skyrockets during big holidays such as Lunar New Year. There are times when the price per kilogram of spiny lobster reaches $150 to $200 odd, even higher for grade 1 lobsters weighing over 2 kilograms. This makes many fishermen compare spiny lobsters to the red gold of the ocean, a highly profitable resource. but also requires serious investment and a strong sense of discipline to exploit sustainably. In fishing communities, especially in Western Australia, where lobster hunting is most developed, there are whole villages that make a living from lobstering. Children grow up with the sound of the waves, watching their fathers go out to sea from a young age. And when they grow up, many also follow in their father's footsteps into the profession. Schools in these areas also incorporate curriculum related to seafood, fishing and marine conservation, helping the younger generation have the basic knowledge so that they can later take over and upgrade the traditional profession with new thinking and new technology. With support from the government, fishing associations, and the consensus of the fishing community, the spiny lobster fishing industry in Australia is entering a new golden age. Not only stopping at exploitation, many businesses have also shifted to farming spiny lobsters in a controlled environment, helping to stabilize the supply when the natural season is erratic. Breeding research centers, farms and seawater treatment plants are springing up, opening up a promising direction for the lobster industry, both diversifying production forms and reducing pressure on marine resources. However, whether farmed or caught, the true value of spiny lobsters still comes from the ocean, from the cold, nutrient-rich waters, from the rugged reefs, from the ancient coral reefs where the lobsters grow naturally in a balanced ecosystem. And no one understands this better than the fishermen, who are willing to sail thousands of nautical miles to catch just a few hundred kilos of lobsters per trip, then continue their journey tirelessly, amidst the white-capped waves. In the vast ocean, where each wave rolls like wild beasts screaming in the dark night, the giant trawlers of European fishermen still quietly move forward, overcoming countless challenges of nature to carry out industrial fishing expeditions, where each catch is not only the result of hard work but also a great victory over the sea. From the bustling seaports of the Netherlands, Spain, Norway or France, the trawler fleets leave the dock in the silence of dawn, when the sunlight has not yet dispelled the cold fog clinging to the hull, starting journeys lasting weeks, even months, in the harsh North Atlantic, on ships over 100 meters long, over 5 stories high, equipped with the most modern technology such as fish-finding sonar, positioning radar and automatic net pulling system. Dozens of sailors work continuously, without rest, in shifts to operate a giant machine like a floating factory in the middle of the ocean. Every time they cast their nets, they hope for a bumper catch, schools of herring, mackerel, cod swimming with the ocean currents, so dense that just observing the sonar, they can see the red screen, signaling the golden sea has appeared. The roar of the engine resounds as the crane system pulls the giant nets hundreds of meters long. The mouth of the net is as wide as a football field. Starting to lower, the trawl net is designed like a giant funnel, the mouth wide open and the tail narrowed, attached to iron doors weighing tons to help the net expand when moving on the seabed. Once the school of fish is trapped inside, there is no way out. The big, strong fish struggled in vain, pushed by the strong current deep into the end of the net, where hundreds, even thousands of tons of fish began to pile up, creating a lively, wet, salty mass with the smell of the ocean. The scene of net collection was the most anticipated moment on the ship, when the alarm sounded. All the sailors immediately took their positions. The giant nets were pulled to the surface of the water in extreme excitement. Slowly, a heavy mass began to float, bulging, sinking, sparkling with the silver light of millions of struggling fish. The sunlight shining on the water reflected on the fish bodies, making the entire net seem to burn in a magical metallic light. The crane automatically lifted the last net back high and discharged the fish into the tank through a giant funnel system. The fish poured down like a flood, flooding the deck, splashing seawater and silvery flakes on the fishermen. The whole ship seemed to shake at that moment. A real rain of fish. Catches of hundreds of tons of fish are not only the result of modern fishing techniques but also the acumen and extensive experience of the captains and crew. Each person has an eye of the sea, the ability to judge where there will be fish based on experience, water temperature, currents, and even the way seabirds move. Many times, an entire fleet of trawlers will be scattered across dozens of nautical miles, keeping in constant contact to share coordinates, calling each other to the area of big catches. Sometimes in just one night, the entire fleet can collect more than 1.000 tons of fish, a huge volume that requires meticulous coordination to preserve, classify and process right on board. Modern trawlers are designed like floating factories in the middle of the ocean. After being dumped into tanks, the fish will be immediately classified by a conveyor system. The largest, highest quality fish are transferred to a fast freezing area at sub-zero temperatures to maintain their freshness. Smaller fish are then cleaned, gutted, packaged according to European market standards and frozen immediately. The entire closed process takes less than an hour from the time the fish are pulled out of the sea until they are in cold storage, ready to be transported to the mainland. Thanks to this, even though they are caught thousands of nautical miles offshore, the fish remain as fresh as if they had just left the sea. Technology is the backbone of modern European trawling. New sonar systems can scan the seabed 360 degrees, helping captains know exactly where the fish are, in which direction they are swimming, and at what density. Radar screens and GPS systems are directly connected to the onshore coordination center, ensuring that the ship is always guided to the best route updates. Surveillance cameras automatically monitor trawling activities to ensure that marine conservation regulations are not violated, and that juvenile fish or protected species are not caught by mistake. But no matter how modern the technology is, the human element remains at the heart of every fishing campaign. The sailors on board, mostly indigenous people living in old coastal fishing villages, are children of the sea. They grew up by the ocean, understanding every wave, every wind. Every season when fish come and go, for them, seafaring is not just a job, but a tradition, a source of pride for an entire generation. Each person has a clear position: crane operator, fish grader, refrigeration system operator, quality control person. During shifts lasting 6 to 12 hours, they work non-stop amid the roar of engines, the sound of water pouring down, and the stormy sound of falling fish. Life on board is a world apart, where people live and work in the middle of the ocean. In the morning, they wake up before the sun rises, working under the bright white halogen lights. Between shifts, they eat quick hot meals in the small dining room, then return to work. At night, when the sea is rough, the ship shakes violently like an earthquake, but everyone continues to work as if it is in their blood. There is no internet, no social media. just the sound of waves and eye contact. And shouts of agreement when nets are pulled in, when fish are found. And every time a 100-ton haul of fish is brought aboard, the whole ship seems to explode in joy of victory, because they know they have just conquered a small part of the vast ocean. It is not always lucky. There are days when, after hours of pulling the net, when the heavy nets are brought aboard, people only see a few dozen tons of small fish scattered around. Or worse, full of seaweed and jellyfish. Disappointment is evident on every sailor's face. But no one complains for long. The sea is like that. Full of surprises and always tests the will of man. That is also what makes each great catch all the more memorable. Like a worthy reward after many days and nights of hardship. Captains on large trawlers are often experienced people. With decades of experience at sea, they possess sharp eyes, able to predict the flow of fish from the most vague signs. When the fish season begins, the captain only needs to listen to the sonar report or simply observe the movements of the seabirds to decide to lower the net at the right time. A successful hit on a large school of fish can bring in 200 to 300 tons in just one pull, enough for the ship to return to the crowded freezer on deck. The atmosphere is always breathtakingly exciting every time the net is pulled. When the bulging net bag is lifted from the sea, streams of fish pour down into the holding tank like a waterfall. The fish wriggle, splash water, and flood the deck. A few cod as big as a forearm fall on the sailors, making them laugh even though they are soaked. Each time like that. It feels like the entire ocean is wrapped up in a moment. The sparkling silver herring, the striped mackerel, the bright pink and white cod, all blend together with the salty smell of the sea. The smell of ship steel and diesel, creating a very unique symphony of industrial seafaring. In the cold storage below, the preservation system is operating at full capacity. Deep freezer tanks, tens of meters long, contain tons of fish that are flash frozen at -40 degrees Celsius. Each tank can keep fish fresh for weeks, even months. Some ships are also equipped with on-site canning and vacuum packaging lines, preparing products for direct export to Asia or North America immediately after docking. Thanks to that, products from European trawlers are always of the highest quality, sought after in major supermarkets around the world. On each journey, ships can travel thousands of nautical miles. From the southern waters of England to the North Pole, down to the Atlantic and back via the English Channel. On that long journey, each day is a new challenge. Some days the sea is calm, the blue water reflecting the clouds and sky. But there are also times when the waves are as high as a wall, beating up and down the ship hundreds of meters, causing everything to shake violently. Winter storms in the North Sea are notoriously fierce, with force 10 to 12 winds, hail, lightning and sub-zero temperatures. In such weather, it is difficult to stand still, let alone haul in nets and operate machinery. Yet European fishermen remain steadfast, maintaining their positions like sea warriors in the midst of the storms. Sailors are occasionally seen sitting pensively with a cup of hot coffee in a small room at the end of the hold. Their eyes look out the steamy window, looking at the distant horizon. They say nothing. But in their hearts they are thinking of their small home, where their wives and children are waiting, where there is a familiar harbor and the smell of dried fish in the gentle afternoon sun. They understand that each trip to sea is not only to make a living, but also a way to keep the fire of the seafaring profession alive. Back to the giant catch. There were times when the ship hit a school of fish so big that it could not be pulled up all at once. The net had to be divided into sections of 100 to 150 tons each. There were so many fish that the tanks overflowed, forcing the captain to send out a signal to allied ships to come and help collect or transfer the fish to a specialized freezer ship. Such situations are not uncommon, especially when they hit the herring spawning season. They swim in large schools that stretch for kilometers, crowding into a lively current under the sea. The sonar appears densely. The screen is red, signaling that a gold mine has appeared. The atmosphere on the ship at that time was bustling like a festival. The sailors sang loudly while working. A few people whistled to the folk songs of their homeland. Under the high-power headlights, the night sea sparkled like broken glass. Fish still poured down, filling each cold compartment, each tank, each freezer. The sound of the engine running, the sound of the waves, the sound of falling fish seemed to blend with the heartbeat of the sailors. They knew that today's catch would feed not only their families but also their hometown port, where hundreds of workers were waiting for the ship to dock to start a new day. Not long after the big catch, the ship continued to move along the warm currents of the North Atlantic, which fishermen call the Fish Road. These are nutrient-rich waters where a variety of commercial fish such as herring, mackerel, cod, flatfish, etc. gather to spawn and feed. The farther from shore, the colder the water, the bigger the waves, and the denser the schools of fish. Waves up to 4 to 6 meters high seemed unable to stop the 1,000-ton ship, because every sailor on board was all too familiar with the madness of the sea. Every 6 hours, the shift changed. In the engine room, the engine hummed, warm and steady like the heartbeat of the ship. On deck, the trawl system was carefully checked. The iron doors were lubricated, and the cables were neatly wound in preparation for the next net drop. When the sonar scan detected a large school of fish swimming at the ideal depth, the command "drop the net" was heard over the loudspeaker system. Everyone got back into position like a perfectly programmed machine. The trawl net was lowered to the bottom. The ship slowed down, and the next hunt began. From the control room, the captain kept a close eye on the sonar screen, observing how the fish moved in the net. They adjusted the ship's speed, direction, and even the tilt of the net door to optimize the catch. When they felt they had enough, they gave the order to pull the net. That was when the pulse on the ship increased. The net was pulled up. Each meter of cable tightened, and from the depths of the ocean emerged a giant bag of fish, bulging like the giant heart of the ocean. The fish were as big as an arm. Millions of them crowded together, shining in the lights like a silver rain. The sight overwhelmed those who had gone to sea for the first time. A young Portuguese sailor recounted the first time he witnessed a catch of more than 200 tons of fish being dumped. "I stood still. The fish poured down like a waterfall. My eyes stung from the wind and the salt, but my heart felt like it was about to burst with joy. I understood why my father had been attached to the sea all his life." Many people once thought that trawler fishing was simply a net pulling job, but in reality, It is a complex chain of techniques, technology, human coordination and even luck. The larger the ship, the longer the net, the more fish caught, the greater the pressure on time, quality of preservation and processing. After each catch of several hundred tons, the entire crew had to coordinate well to put the fish into the tank, classify them by size, check the quality, pre-process, freeze them. Every second that passed was the life of millions of fish that needed to be kept in the freshest state. The engineers on board worked tirelessly. They checked the cold storage temperature, the pressure of the flash freezing system, the quality of the filtered seawater circulating in the tanks. If there is any problem, a broken air conditioner, a clogged pipe, an electrical leak, the entire batch of fish is at risk of being spoiled immediately. Therefore, each sea voyage is a challenge not only for the physical strength, but also for the knowledge and improvisation of the entire crew. And when the fish have been preserved and processed, the numbers on the control screen in the monitoring room jump up. Each box is bar-coded, clearly stating the type of fish, weight, fishing coordinates, net collection time and freezing time. The ship is so modern that it can transmit data to the mainland in real time so that the fishing company knows exactly what each batch is, and is ready to arrange a refrigerated container truck waiting when the ship arrives at port. The cold supply chain starts in the middle of the ocean and extends all the way to supermarkets in Frankfurt, Paris or Tokyo. Besides fish, ships sometimes encounter strange creatures. Sometimes it was a sunfish weighing more than a ton, caught in the net while hunting for herring. Sometimes it was giant squids more than 3 meters long, slippery bodies, eyes as big as dinner plates, causing a stir on the whole ship. They are not commercial objects, but are always brought up to the deck and released back into the sea immediately after being filmed and their sizes recorded. Sharks, sperm whales or sea turtles also sometimes appear near the ship, making the sailors cheer like children. Despite fishing on an industrial scale, European fleets always have to strictly comply with regulations on marine life conservation. They have warning devices to avoid catching banned species, camera systems to monitor all trawling activities to ensure transparency, and must periodically report the amount of fish caught to the Fisheries Management Agency. There are days when sonar detects large schools of fish, but the captain has to let them go because they are species outside the quota or the fishing area is full. Although regretful, they still accept, because if they are exploited indiscriminately, the 100-ton catches today will not be repeated next year. After long days at sea, when the freezer compartment was full to the last lid, the heavy ship turned its bow towards the mainland, carrying
Дальше будет БГ. Треска и пикша мелкая.
hundreds of tons of fish, the result of sleepless nights. The return journey was not as bustling as when it set sail, but it was filled with a quiet joy. Sailors cleaned the equipment, tidied up the nets, recorded the output. Some took the opportunity to write in their logbooks. Others lay on their backs on the deck to gaze at the dense starry sky, a light that they could only see clearly when there were no cities, no electric lights, only the calm sea embracing the universe. Arriving at the port was an important event. At major fishing ports such as Amoden, Netherlands, Vigo, Spain, Bergen, Norway, or Boulogne-sur-Mer, France, long lines of refrigerated containers were waiting. Agents, buyers, Technicians and quality inspectors were all present. The cold storage doors open, and each crate of whole frozen fish is lifted up. Neat. Stacked on the conveyor belt for inspection, and then transferred directly to a refrigerated truck to be taken to the processing plant. The icy smell emanating from the giant blocks of frozen fish makes the entire port seem to be immersed in the salty and cold mist typical of the open sea. Inside the processing plants near the port, the assembly line operates 24/7. Workers in cold weather jackets and gloves sort fish by size, behead, gut, debone, and fillet them. Hundreds of fish can be processed every minute, then placed in vacuum trays, boxed, labeled with traceability information, from the coordinates of the catch, the date and time of the net collection, to the ship that brought the fish to shore. Each batch of hundreds of tons of fish is not only a story of fishing, but also the first link in the global seafood supply chain, where fish caught from the North Atlantic will be on the dining table in Singapore, Tokyo or New York in just a few days. However, the life of a fisherman does not stop at docking. After a few short days off with their families, they board the ship, set sail again, continuing the tiring but inseparable cycle. An old Norwegian sailor once said, "When I am on land, I cannot sleep. I miss the sound of the waves, the sound of the engine, the smell of fish and the salty taste on my lips. The sea is the blood in my veins." His words are not an exaggeration, but the truth of hundreds of thousands of trawlers in Europe, people who have dedicated their lives to the ocean. Despite the hardships and dangers, the most modern ships do not usually travel alone. They belong to large fleets, a fleet of 5 to 10 ships, divided up to operate in large areas of the sea and keep in constant contact. When one ship detects a fish run, the remaining ships can navigate to support or share coordinates. Sometimes, the entire fleet pulls nets in the same area, creating a spectacular picture in the middle of the ocean, a series of giant ships following each other. The net system lowered at the same time. Hundreds of tons of fish gradually rising to the surface of the water.
Вот сейчас закрома посыпется. Вот она. Вот она, красавица.
Shining like silver waterfalls in the bright afternoon sunlight. Those images, for those in the profession, are prouder moments than any title. Pulling up 300 tons of fish at once is not only a victory of technique but also a testament to the courage, resilience and absolute faith in the ocean. Young people new to the profession often stand quietly at the stern of the ship, watching the fish fall and suddenly understand, this is not just a job, this is a whole life. A thread connecting people with the vast ocean. It is not uncommon for outsiders to think that trawling is an ocean sweep. But they do not know that behind the big catches are hundreds of strict regulations on protecting marine resources. Each vessel has fishing grounds limits, quotas, species allowed to be caught and minimum size.